My grandmother built her bakery with her own hands, and it was the only place I ever truly felt like myself. But the morning after we buried her, my aunt changed the locks and handed the keys to my cousin, telling everyone I had no claim to it. They thought I was too soft to fight back. They were about to find out what a forensic accountant does for a living. What I uncovered during discovery didn't just win my case, it ended my aunt's entire career. Make sure you stay until the end, because the moment the judge spoke was something I will never forget. And we love knowing where our viewers are watching from. Drop your city in the comments right now. The grief hit me in waves. Some mornings I could almost function, make coffee, feed my cat, drive to work without pulling over. Other mornings I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. My grandmother had been gone for 11 days when my phone buzzed with a text from my aunt that I still have screenshotted, word for word, on my phone to this day. Hey, just letting you know, Brooke is going to be taking over the bakery going forward. She's been wanting to pivot her content toward the cottage food aesthetic anyway, and the space is perfect. I already called the utilities company. Don't worry about the equipment, we'll donate what Brooke doesn't want. Thought you should know. Deanna. I read it 3 times. Then I set my phone face down on my desk and breathed for 60 seconds, the way my therapist had taught me. Then I picked it back up and read it again. The bakery. My grandmother's bakery. The one she had opened 31 years ago in a converted Victorian on Pembroke Street. The one where she had taught me to laminate croissant dough on a marble slab she'd shipped from France with money she'd saved for 2 years. The one whose smell, brown butter, cardamom, yeast I associated more with safety than any house I'd ever lived in. The one that my grandmother, in a will drafted by her attorney and signed in the presence of 2 witnesses, had left entirely to me. My Aunt Diana was the executor of that will. She had sat in the attorney's office 6 weeks ago, dry-eyed and straight-backed, while the document was read aloud. She had heard my name attached to that property as clearly as I had. I called her. She picked up on the first ring, which told me she had been expecting it. Diana, I said. The bakery was left to me. You know that. You were sitting 4 feet away when it was read. Sweetheart. Her voice was the careful, modulated tone she used when she was managing something. She managed a regional HR department for a logistics company, and she spoke to everyone like they were a liability to be contained. Your grandmother and I had many conversations in her final months that you weren't privy to. She had doubts about the will. She told me privately that she wanted Brooke to have it. The document doesn't reflect her true wishes. Then her attorney can speak to that, I said. Her attorney is 80 years old and barely remembers his own name, she said, which was a lie. I had spoken to him 2 days before, and he was perfectly sharp. What I'm telling you is that this is a family matter, and I'm asking you to be reasonable. You have a career. You have your apartment. You don't need a bakery, Rachel. Brooke does. This fits her brand. I almost laughed. There it was, the word brand. My cousin had a lifestyle account with about 40,000 followers who watched her arrange heirloom tomatoes on linen tablecloths and make cold brew in aesthetically pleasing pots. She had never worked a food service shift in her life. She had never woken up at 3:30 in the morning to proof dough. She had visited my grandmother's bakery exactly twice in the last 4 years, both times to take photos for her account, and both times she had left without helping close. I'm not being unreasonable, I said. I'm telling you what the law says. The bakery is mine. Please don't do anything else until we've spoken to the attorney together. I've already called the locksmith, my aunt said pleasantly. Brooke is moving her equipment in this weekend. I think you should take some time to grieve properly, Rachel. This kind of rigidity isn't healthy. She hung up. I sat very still for a moment. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the will documents I had been given as a named beneficiary, the commercial lease in my grandmother's name, and the business license. I am a forensic accountant. I have spent 6 years reconstructing financial histories that people desperately wanted to stay buried. I know what a paper trail looks like. I know what the absence of one looks like. And I know that my Aunt Diana, who had been managing my grandmother's business finances for the last 4 years under a limited power of attorney, my grandmother had granted her after a hip surgery, had just made the single most expensive mistake of her organized, careful life. I drove to Pembroke Street the next morning without calling ahead. I had the original key my grandmother had given me when I turned 22, attached to a small enamel charm of a rolling pin she'd bought at a craft fair. When I pulled up, there was a white cargo van parked at the curb, and Brooke was standing in the doorway holding a ring light, directing a man in a t-shirt who was carrying one of my grandmother's copper mixing bowls toward the van. "Stop," I said, getting out of my car. My voice came out flat and cold. The man with the bowl stopped. Brooke turned around. She was wearing an apron she had clearly purchased for the occasion. It was unworn, pristine, artfully tied. She had clip-on bangs she'd been trying out on her account. She looked at me the way a person looks at a scheduling conflict. "Oh," she said. "Mom said you might come by." "Rachel, I know this is weird, but can we not do this right now? I have a brand partnership announcement going live at noon, and I need to get the space set up." "Put the bowl back," I said to the man, who looked at Brooke uncertainly. "It's fine," Brooke said to him. "Just set it down inside." "That bowl belongs to this property," I said, pulling out my phone and beginning to film. "My name is Rachel, and I am the legal owner of this property as designated in the will of Margaret, my grandmother, who passed 11 days ago. Any removal of property from this premises without my consent is theft. I'm documenting this now." Brooke stared at me. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm always serious," I said. "I need you, and everyone you've brought here to leave the property immediately. I'll give you an hour to collect your personal items." She called her mother. I knew she would. I kept filming the ring light, the copper bowls lined up by the door, the new key lock on the front door I had not been given a key to. I walked around the building, documenting every change. They had removed my grandmother's hand-painted sign from above the door and replaced it with a printed banner that said Brooks Bungalow Bakes in a serif font. They had removed it after less than 48 hours. It had hung in that spot for 26 years. My aunt arrived in under 15 minutes, which meant she had been nearby. She stepped out of her car, looking pressed and purposeful, the way she always did, blazer buttoned, earrings in, hair smooth. "Rachel," she said, "I see you've decided to make this difficult." "I called the police," I said. "They should be here in about 10 minutes. Her expression flickered. "Just slightly, just enough. This is a private family matter," she said, lowering her voice. "You do not want to involve law enforcement in a family dispute." "It stopped being a family dispute when you changed the locks on my property," I said. When the officer arrived, I presented the will, my ID, and my status as named beneficiary. My aunt presented nothing except her composure and a firm assertion that the matter was being resolved internally. The officer was a patient woman who had clearly seen a version of this before. She explained to my aunt and cousin that regardless of any ongoing disputes, the named beneficiary in a probated will had legal standing to the property, and that if the current owner asked them to leave, they needed to leave. Brooke cried. Genuine tears, which surprised me. She grabbed her ring light and her monogram tote bag and her unworn apron and walked to her mother's car without saying anything to me. My aunt walked to the car as well, then stopped with her hand on the door and turned around. "You want to play it this way," she said quietly. "Fine, you'll regret it." "I already regret a lot of things about this family," I said. "I've learned to live with it." She left. I stood in my grandmother's bakery in the gray November light and looked at the bare hook above the door where the sign had been, and I felt something settle inside me, cold and resolved and clear as a financial statement. A week later, my aunt hired an attorney. His name was presented in the letter as Gregory Park, Esquire, and the letter he sent was elegant and aggressive in equal measure. My aunt was filing a petition to contest the will on the grounds that my grandmother had been experiencing cognitive decline and had been subject to undue influence specifically from me. They were requesting the will be invalidated, and the bakery placed under the estate's control to be managed by my aunt as executor. I read the letter twice. The second time I noticed the phrase, "years of documented decline," and something cold moved through me. Because my aunt had been managing my grandmother's finances for 4 years, and if she was now claiming my grandmother had been declining for years, then what exactly had she been doing with access to those accounts for all that time? I called my own attorney the next morning. Her name was Priya, and she had been recommended to me by a colleague at my firm. She was in her late 40s, efficient in a way that felt almost aggressive, and she had a habit of tapping her pen against her legal pad when she was thinking that I found enormously reassuring. "Your aunt is the executor," she said, reading through the petition. "She had a limited power of attorney for financial matters." "For 4 years," I said. "Since my grandmother's hip surgery." Priya tapped her pen. "And you were named as the beneficiary of the business and its associated accounts." "Yes. Have you looked at those accounts yet?" "As the designated beneficiary with executor rights now that the will has passed probate." I had looked. I had started looking 2 days before I called her, because I am a forensic accountant, and because my aunt had used the words "years of documented decline" in a legal filing, and because something about that phrase had itched at me like a wrong number in a column that won't balance. "There are irregularities," I said. Priya stopped tapping. "Tell me." My grandmother's business had been modest, but stable. She'd run a profitable small bakery for 3 decades, owned the building outright, and had kept a clean set of books. Her personal and business accounts were separate, but both had been under my aunt's power of attorney. What I found when I pulled the statements, which I was legally entitled to do as the named executor beneficiary, was a pattern so regular, it was almost contemptuous. Starting approximately 40 months ago, a recurring transfer of $1,100 left the business operating account on the first of every month. Not to any vendor, not to any supplier. To a personal account I didn't recognize. 6 months later, a second transfer began $800. Every 15th, same destination, for 40 months, to an account that was not my grandmother's. That was nearly $80,000. And that was just from the business account. I hadn't finished reviewing the personal one yet. "We're not just defending a will," Priya said, and her voice had gone very quiet and very focused, the way mine does when I find the number that breaks everything open. "We're going to request full discovery on every account your aunt had access to." "She's going to fight that," I said. "She opened the door," Priya said. "She claimed your grandmother was financially vulnerable. I am thrilled to explore that." The mandatory mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. The room was at a mediator's office downtown Neutral Walls, a coffee maker that nobody touched, a long table that managed to feel adversarial despite being rectangular. I sat with Priya. Across from us sat my aunt, my cousin, and Gregory Park, whose suit was excellent and whose smile did not reach his eyes. "Thank you all for being here," the mediator began. "We don't need to be here long," Gregory said. "My clients have been generous in bringing a settlement offer to this table. Given the emotional difficulty of this situation for the entire family, they are prepared to offer Rachel a cash payment of $60,000 in exchange for her relinquishing her claim to the business property. This is a fair valuation given the— We're not here to discuss a settlement," Priya said, pleasantly, as though Gregory had suggested something mildly interesting. "We're here to inform your clients that we will be proceeding to trial. We are also counterfiling for full legal costs for the documented damage to the property during the unauthorized occupancy and for punitive damages given the bad faith nature of this petition." My aunt sat very still. She was wearing the same structured blazer she always wore to things that mattered. Brooke, beside her, was scrolling her phone with the particular absorbed blankness of someone trying to look like they're not listening. "Bad faith is a serious accusation," Gregory said. "So is elder abuse," Priya said. The phone went still in Brooke's hand. "I beg your pardon," Gregory said, and for the first time, the smile slipped. "Your clients claim my grandmother was financially vulnerable," Priya said. "That she was in decline, that she was susceptible to influence. We agree that someone was influencing her finances. We disagree about who." She slid a single page across the table. "This is a preliminary summary of the recurring transfers from my client's grandmother's business operating account over the last 40 months. Approximately $1,900 per month, transferred to an account we have traced to a personal savings account held in the name of Diana." My aunt looked at the paper. She did not pick it up. Her hand on the table tightened. That was for operating expenses," she said. "She needed help. She asked me to manage a discretionary fund. She was getting forgetful. I was helping her. $1,900 a month in discretionary spending, for 40 months, to your personal account," Priya said. "With no receipts, no invoices, and no disclosure to the estate. This is preposterous, Gregory said. It's also, Priya said, sliding a second sheet across, only the business account. We've begun reviewing the personal account. We'll have more to share at trial. She paused. I'd also like to note that we will be calling Brooke as a witness. Brooke's head snapped up. Absolutely not, Gregory said. She is a material witness to the unauthorized occupancy and to the removal of business property, Priya said. She is also, we anticipate, a recipient of funds that may be relevant to this matter. She looked at my aunt calmly. Diana, you accused a dead woman of losing her mind in order to take what she left to her granddaughter, and while you were doing that, you were taking money from her accounts every single month. I want you to understand what is coming, not just the civil matter, all of it. My aunt stood up. Her chair scraped back hard. You have nothing, she said, and her voice for the first time was not smooth. It was something under pressure, something that might crack. You have a fishing expedition and a grieving girl who doesn't understand how businesses work. I managed that bakery for 4 years while you, she pointed at me, were off playing accountant in your little office. I kept it running. I earned compensation. Then you should have disclosed it, I said. It was the first thing I'd said in 20 minutes, and the quiet of it seemed to land harder than anything else in the room. You should have documented it. You should have told the estate attorney. You didn't, because it wasn't compensation, Diana. It was a secret. She didn't answer that. She and Gregory left together. Brooke followed, but slowly, and at the door she turned back once and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not performance, not deflection, just a young woman watching the floor of her world develop a crack. I found her 2 weeks later. I wasn't going to, but Priya had mentioned that Brooke, as a named collaborator, in a promotional agreement with 2 brands that had partially funded through the business account, had legal exposure she might not be aware of. I thought she deserved to know. She was working at a Pilates studio front desk. She had taken the job recently. I could tell from the way she held herself at the counter, still slightly uncertain about where things were. She had been used to being the person arriving, not the person checking people in. When she saw me walk through the door, she looked like she wanted to disappear into the wall. I'm not here to fight, I said. Can we talk for 5 minutes? We sat in the small waiting area after her coworker agreed to cover the desk. Brooke held a paper cup of water with both hands and didn't look at me. Mom said not to talk to you, she said. I know. I wanted to give you information. What you do with it is up to you. I put a single document on the table between us. This is a record of transactions from my grandmother's business account that were categorized as marketing expenses, including 2 payments to a company called Bloom Content Studio, which is your LLC. I'm not saying you knew where the money came from. I'm saying your name is on documents that are going to be exhibits at trial. She looked at the paper without touching it. I didn't know, she said, finally. It was very quiet. She told me it was a sponsorship deal she'd arranged. She said Grandma had loved the idea of having the bakery on my account. She said it was her gift to me. She pressed the cup between her palms. I thought she was paying me out of her own money. I thought I don't know what I thought. She handled everything. She always handled everything. I didn't ask questions. I know, I said. And I did. I had grown up in the same family. I knew how my aunt handled things. I knew how she made decisions, land as facts, before you had time to question them. She did this to Grandma, Brooke said. Not a question. The accounts suggest she did, yes. Brooke put the cup down. Her eyes were wet. Grandma used to save up to buy me birthday presents, she said. She'd tell me she'd been setting money aside for months. She was so proud when she could give me something. She stopped. Was that her own money? Or had Mom already? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Brooke put her face in her hands. She really loved us, Brooke said. She was genuinely proud of me. And Mom was. Yes, I said. I gave her the card of the attorney Priya had recommended for independent counsel. I told her she needed to make a decision about which side of this she was going to be on. I told her that cooperating with the court would matter enormously. I told her that the woman at the front desk had looked at us twice, and we should probably finish up. She called the attorney 2 days later. I know because Priya told me. She also told me that Brooke had asked, twice, whether my grandmother would have understood. The trial was in probate court, which is not dramatic in the way people picture courtrooms. There were no galleries, no reporters, no wooden pews packed with spectators. It was a small room with a high window that let in a cold, flat rectangle of January light. I sat with Priya at one table, surrounded by 3 binders of exhibits I had organized myself and labeled in the way I label everything precisely, chronologically, completely. My aunt sat at the other table with a new attorney, a woman named Carter, who had a reputation for aggressive procedural filings. My aunt's expression was what I had come to think of as her management face, controlled, remote, giving nothing. Then the doors opened and Brooke walked in. She was wearing a plain navy dress. Her hair was down, no styling to it. She looked younger than I had ever seen her look younger, and exhausted, and present in a way she usually wasn't. She looked at my aunt first. My aunt gave a small, sharp shake of her head, a command so old between them it didn't need words. Brooke looked at me. Then she walked to the row of seats and sat down one space behind my table. My aunt made a sound not quite a word, just the compressed beginning of one, and then pressed her lips together. The judge entered. She was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a beaded chain, and the particular air of someone who has heard a great many people's worst impulses narrated in careful legal language and has lost patience for theater. "We're here in the matter of the estate of Margaret," the judge said. "I've reviewed the pre-trial submissions, Miss Priya. You may proceed." Priya was methodical and precise. She established the will's validity through testimony from my grandmother's attorney, who confirmed he had reviewed the document with her over 2 separate meetings, that she had asked clarifying questions, that she had requested specific language, and that she had seemed, in his professional assessment, completely lucid. He had known her for 19 years. He cried briefly, then composed himself. My aunt's attorney tried to shake him on cross and didn't get far. Priya presented the medical records. My grandmother's physician confirmed there had been no formal dementia diagnosis, no cognitive assessment that had raised flags, nothing in the file that supported a claim of incapacity. Her memory had been typical for her age. She had been 74 years old, not 90. She had remembered her medications, her appointments, her grandchildren's birthdays. She had remembered, with apparently great care, exactly what she wanted to leave and to whom. Then, Priya turned to the financial records. "Your Honor," she said, "the petitioner claimed that the deceased was financially vulnerable and susceptible to outside influence. We have taken that claim seriously. What we found is that someone was, in fact, exerting financial influence over this estate. But it was not my client." She walked the judge through the business account. The recurring transfers 40 months, $1,900 each month, totaling approximately $76,000, all moved to my aunt's personal account. Then she walked through the personal account, where the picture was worse. A pattern of transfers beginning nearly 5 years ago, accelerating in the final 18 months, that amounted to an additional $61,000 funneled out through a series of transactions categorized variously as household support, care coordination, and, in one memorable entry, family gift. There was no record of my grandmother having authorized any of these. There was a record of my aunt accessing the account management portal from her home IP address on the dates the transfers were initiated. Total, $137,000. My aunt sat very still. Furthermore, Priya said, "We are prepared to show that $6,200 in business account funds were transferred to an LLC operated by the petitioner's daughter." She looked briefly at Brooke, who was staring at the floor. "We are not alleging that the daughter was aware of the source of those funds. We have a witness prepared to speak to that." My aunt's attorney stood. "Your Honor, these financial allegations are outside the scope of a will contest proceeding. They are directly within the scope," the judge said, her voice dry. "Given that your client introduced the question of the decedent's financial vulnerability as the basis for this petition, I am very interested in who made her vulnerable and how." "Proceed." Priya called Brooke to the stand. Brooke walked to the front of the room, looking like someone walking to something they were afraid of, and doing it anyway, which I thought was maybe the most honest thing I had ever seen her do. She was sworn in, She sat. She kept her hands folded in her lap. "Miss Brooke," Priya said gently, "can you tell the court how your lifestyle content business came to receive payments from your grandmother's bakery operating account?" Brooke told the truth. She told it clearly and without embellishment, and with a steadiness I found surprising. And then, thinking about it, not surprising at all. She was terrified, and fear can make people very still. She said her mother had told her it was a brand partnership her grandmother had been excited about. She said she had received payments through the LLC and had understood them to be legitimate business income. She said she had not known the money had come from her grandmother's accounts. "Did your grandmother ever discuss the bakery partnership with you directly?" Priya asked. "No," Brooke said. "I thought that was because she was getting older and Mom was handling the details. Mom always said Grandma trusted her to manage things." "And your grandmother's relationship with you, would you describe it as warm?" Brooke's voice cracked for the first time. "She was the warmest person I knew," she said. "She used to make my favorite cookies without me asking, because she just remembered. She remembered everything about all of us." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "She didn't have cognitive decline. She was sharp. She just trusted my mom. She loved my mom, even though my mom..." She stopped again. My aunt was looking at the table directly in front of her, unmoving. "I'm sorry," Brooke said, and she was looking at me. "I'm really sorry, Rachel, about the bakery, about the sign, about all of it. She wanted you to have it. She told me once that you were the only one who really knew what the place meant. I didn't listen because I didn't want to. And Mom," she stopped. "I should have asked more questions. I should have asked a lot more questions a lot sooner." The room was quiet. The judge looked at my aunt. "Miss Diana," she said, "your attorney has indicated you will be exercising your Fifth Amendment rights regarding the financial matters outlined today. Is that correct?" My aunt's attorney stood. "It is, Your Honor." The judge's expression did not change. She made a note. She let the silence sit for a moment in a way that felt very deliberate. "Very well," she said. "In the matter of the petition to contest the will of Margaret, I find the petition to be without evidentiary foundation. The testimony of the decedent's physician and attorney, taken together with the documented communications and the financial records introduced by the defense, presents a clear and consistent picture of a woman who was mentally competent, intentional in her estate planning, and whose final wishes were lawfully recorded. The petition is denied. The will stands in its entirety." My aunt's attorney wrote something on her legal pad. The judge continued, "I am further awarding the respondent Rachel her full legal costs, as this petition was filed without sufficient basis and caused measurable harm. I am also awarding punitive damages in the amount of $45,000, given the egregious nature of the filing, which required the respondent to defend not only her legal rights, but the memory and mental competence of her deceased grandmother." She paused. "And I want to be direct about what I am about to do next." She took off her glasses. "I have reviewed the financial records submitted in this proceeding in some detail. What they show is not ambiguous. What they show is a person who was trusted by her elderly mother, trusted by the law, trusted by the financial institutions that gave her access to those accounts, and who used that trust to systematically drain the savings of a woman who loved her, over a period of years, while that woman was alive and did not know. I have been on this bench for a long time. I rarely use the word despicable. I am using it today." She put her glasses back on. "I am referring the complete financial record in this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation and prosecution of elder financial abuse and theft. All exhibits, all subpoenaed records, and the full transcript of this proceeding will accompany that referral." She looked at my aunt. "You attempted to invalidate your mother's last wishes in order to conceal what you did to her while she was alive. You used her love for you as a financial instrument. And you used her memory as a weapon against the granddaughter she trusted most." She picked up her gavel. "We are adjourned." The crack of it sounded like a period at the end of a very long sentence. My aunt did not look at me when she stood. She did not look at Brooke. She looked at nothing specific and walked to the door with her attorney, and she left. And the careful, controlled, blazer-buttoned version of her that had existed for my entire life left with her, and what remained was just the legal aftermath of a choice she had made a long time ago when she had decided her mother's trust was a resource to be managed. The rest happened quickly, the way endings do after a long story. The district attorney's office opened an investigation within 3 weeks. My aunt resigned from her company before the charges were filed, though the resignation letter, which I heard about through my grandmother's attorney, described it as a planned transition. The bank where she had held her accounts conducted its own internal audit, as institutions tend to do when a former power of attorney holder is referred to a DA, and the findings were not favorable to her. She was charged with elder financial abuse, theft, and breach of fiduciary duty. Her attorney entered a not guilty plea. The trial is scheduled for later this year. I intend to attend. Brooke was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation and testimony. She sold the pink car voluntarily. I don't know if it was guilt or financial necessity, probably some of both, and enrolled in an actual culinary program at the community college, which I found out when she texted me a photo of herself in a professional kitchen with flour on her forearms and a caption that said, "First real thing I've made from scratch. It's a disaster. Grandma would have fixed it." I stared at that text for a while. I wrote back, "She would have fixed it and then made you do it again until you got it right." Brooke sent back a crying emoji, then a laughing one. It was not forgiveness, exactly. It was the beginning of something more careful and more honest than what we'd had before. I used part of the punitive damages to have my grandmother's hand-painted sign restored by a woman in town who does historical signage. She worked from a photograph I had taken 7 years ago, and when she was done, it looked exactly right, not new, but restored, which is different. I hung it back above the door on a Sunday morning in early March, when the light was coming in at an angle off the parking lot and the maples were just starting to think about budding. Then I unlocked the front door with the key my grandmother had given me, the one with the rolling pin charm, worn smooth now from years in my pocket, and I went inside. And I turned on the lights, and I started the oven. I am a forensic accountant. My job is to follow the numbers until they tell the truth. But my grandmother was a baker, and what she knew, what she tried to teach me, standing at that marble slab on Saturday mornings, when I was 8 years old and too impatient to let the dough rest, was that the things worth keeping require patience. They require showing up. They require someone who will not walk away when the work is inconvenient or unglamorous or quietly, persistently hard. She had known who that person was. She had written it into the most permanent document she had. The oven clicked to temperature. The morning was quiet except for the sound of it. Outside on Pembroke Street, a car went past, then another, and somewhere down the block, someone was walking a dog in the pale early light. The bakery smelled like old wood and clean metal, and the faint, sweet ghost of 30 years of butter and sugar and effort. I started with croissants, because that was where she always started with me. Because some things are worth doing in the right order, from the beginning, with your own 2 hands.